Let's go ahead and wrap things up here with some talk about what's going on in the prop betting market. And this is now we're into the college ranks here and not necessarily in the pro ranks we were talking about a little bit earlier. But Adam, this is something you and we've talked about a couple different times on the podcast, given our opinions on all of this. And now we get a study come out that I'm not going to say is incorrect. I will just say I have the little like curious face emoji going on as I was reading this on LSR.
I'll give you a little bit of behind the scenes on the reporting and publishing of this story. Our Sam McQuillan came to me with this note from Jordan Bender at JMP Securities, and to be clear, who has been a very reliable person to discuss matters related to sports betting for a couple of years, and said that they had this note that they were putting out that said that if a national ban on college props, as we heard requested by NCAA President Charlie Baker, were to go into effect, that it would slash roughly $200 million from the annual revenue of legal sports books in the United States. We're talking about $11 billion of revenue and roughly $200 million. So you're talking about a little less than 2% of all revenue made on sports betting in the United States coming from college player props. Just think about that for a second. It's a tough one for me to get my head around. Now, we mathed it out, and I felt comfortable reporting what this note said. However, it would be surprising to me if the sports books all threw open their ledgers and showed us what the wagering looked like, and it came out to this. Mm-hmm. I think the important part of this story, though, is to report on, yes, the NCAA, after successfully lobbying the state of Ohio to change its rules to no longer allow player props on college athletes, has now tried to take this national. And we knew they would. No surprise at all that the NCAA had one round of success and then said, you know what, we're going for everyone. We're going to try to see if we can get these banned in as many places as possible. And Matt, you and I have said on the podcast, we're not entirely opposed to it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, we're not entirely opposed to the idea of banning player props on college athletes. I know there have been those in the legal sports betting market who have said, if you do this, it's just going to drive people offshore. They're just going to go find a way to bet on it, et cetera, et cetera. Okay,
fair,
maybe
fair. Yeah, right,
I
fair.
mean, it's a fair argument. I agree with the argument, but I also feel like as we get into the idea of juice being worth the squeeze, you already mentioned, you as a regular bettor would be willing to give up some end-of-the-bench players in professional sports leagues having props in order to facilitate the overall health of the market. I think you'll find an even broader swath of the population who's willing to give up player props on college athletes, which is maybe one of the most on-the-surface susceptible areas for someone with bad intent to be able to manipulate the legal market. That is a place where I believe that if we were to find some sort of a compromise that was closer to what the NCAA was looking for, I think you would find more consensus out there than you would expect.
Yeah, I think that there are solutions to not having to do an outright ban, but Adam, it would take what we commonly know as what we commonly know as prop betting, and kind of have to twist it a little bit. Of course, the obvious one that you and I have said multiple different times where you could leave it the same that it is right now is just make the limits just basically micro limits, right? Like you're never getting down more than $500 on a certain bet. But the thing is that the algorithms can also go in and, put a limit on each, on different players too, right? I mean, like this is not crazy. The technology companies are fantastic at this stuff. If I go in and try to bet a golfer, right, like I can't put as much down on a guy that's 150 to 1 as a guy that is 20 to 1, right? Because they don't want me to be able to put that. I can't win $250,000 on, on like one golf outright bet. So the limit is lower on that specific player than it is on a guy who's a little bit lower odds. And you could go about it from that standpoint. If you want to do that, you could even tier the bets and the max bets on certain players and certain things like that. Or, Adam, I mean, we don't like this as bettors, right? We don't like this as bettors, but if we wanted to keep some form of collegiate prop betting, you could make them one-way markets, right? And you have to bet the over. I mean, because the only way that this, that bad stuff happens is when you can go the under, because a person could then air quote tank or whatever it is, or do something like that. Like if it's for achievement, right? Well, there's no guarantee in achievement. And so, you can make them one-way markets, right? And it could just, they would be all over bets. You wouldn't be able to make under bets if you wanted to. So again, just there are solutions to this without an outright ban, but again, if an outright ban is what it is to like make sure that we don't have to deal with this all the time, then I guess so be it.
Let me add a thought to this, Matt, because you can go beyond the individual player props. What if they are team-based props, right? What if instead of Blake Corum's rushing yards for Michigan, we talk about Michigan rushing yards total in the game, right? Because the theory being it is a lot harder to get a whole group of people to agree to manipulate a market than it is to get one player to, turn an ankle early in a game and have to come out like the Jonte Porter situation, right? Like there are ways to offer some markets here that I think would still meet the appetite of bettors who want to be able to get really into a college game without us having to offer a market that would not make a lot of regulators and legislators happy, as we have the perception of these things become more and more, I'm not going to say tainted. Tainted's not the right word.
Right.
But misunderstood in some ways, sullied in some ways with the stories of the last couple of weeks. Because I am not unsympathetic to those who say that the proliferation of sports betting is going to raise the risk of integrity problems within sports, raise the risk of problem gamblers, etc. I've always said that believe that the right way to deal with it is for legislators and regulators to be enacting the right rules, to be putting money behind responsible gambling efforts, to be strongly holding operators accountable when they fail at KYC, when they fail at anti-money laundering, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the things that can be done to enhance what's happening in the legal market so that there can be a way for the legal market to exist that does not draw the ire of regulators and legislators who, as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, many have a fundamental misunderstanding of what the legal market is.
Yeah, and this also goes into the whole deal of you ban this, but if you don't ban the pick'em games, like it's again, it is a far-reaching deal because the pick'ems would still offer the stuff. So I don't know. We said an outright ban doesn't have to happen. You gave an example of something that could happen. I gave a couple of examples of something that happened. Another example would be, and this would be the one I would hate the most, but if it would at least keep it live, is that you just couldn't make single bet prop bets, right? Like everything would have to be a parlay, and so like you were talking about, Adam, is like it's very hard. It's harder to get multiple people to do things than it would be to get a single person to do things, and so like we don't want to go to that extreme or that measure, but again, we don't have to just because something might happen, some bad things might be able to happen. That's just like, okay, got to be cut off. Let's ban it all together. There are ways we could go about this without doing that again, whether it's limits, whether it's making all the markets one-way markets, whether it's, you have to at least have two legs to make a prop bet. Like you said, maybe it's team-based as opposed to injury. There are solutions to this that aren't always just like, okay, let's cut it off completely.
Totally agreed. And where I think that you have to really put the onus for this is on the sports books, right? They have to be the ones to recognize what could happen, which could be a far more reaching ban on NCAA props, maybe on certain professional player props, things that in the long run might actually have some effect on their bottom line, but not a really huge effect on their bottom line. And what they need to do is some of the ideas that we're throwing against the wall, and I think what you and I are doing, Matt, is throwing things against the wall just to show how many ways there are to deal with this without an outright ban. But the sportsbooks need to be the ones to say, we're going to innovate with some products that still meet the needs of our customers, that also meet the needs of regulators and legislators. But again, the idea of self-regulation is not a new discussion for us. We've been having the idea of will sportsbooks self-regulate for a long time. And I think it's, quite honestly, it's a mixed record of success in their doing that. Now, I'll throw another little piece of news in there that happened in the last couple of weeks. We did see a number of large U.S. sports books form a responsible gambling coalition, and I think that is a step in the right direction without question. And this is the sort of thing that a coalition of sports books working on responsible gambling could
decide to take up as an issue. Yeah. Again, we will continue to follow these stories, and you can read them all in depth over at legalsportsreport.com. Again, guys, everything we do absolutely free, so do appreciate your support. If you want to hit that subscribe button or thumbs up button or like button or anything like that, any sort of buttons, press any button, any of the buttons you want to press. We're
just
okay
not the
with
panic button, all right?
Yeah,
I've seen enough of that the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, any of those. We don't want that, but any of the other buttons, go ahead and push them. We do appreciate it. If you want to follow Adam at Adam Candee, 2 E's, no wife, hit yourself. You can follow me at Matt Brown M2 for Adam. I'm Matt. Talk to you guys next week.